Ever been totally fooled by something that seems so legit?
Oh, yeah.
I almost fell for this investment scheme once.
Yeah.
Guaranteed return, they said.
Oh, wow.
Turns out our brains are practically wired to fall for these things sometimes.
It's true. Yeah, our brains, they love a good shortcut.
Right.
A way to process information quickly. And those shortcuts, those are called schemas.
Okay, schemas. We're diving into that today.
Right.
With this fascinating brief from the SCARS Institute,
Okay.
the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams. We're talking about the psychology behind why we fall for scams.
Right.
And not just the romantic kind.
Exactly. Yeah, this deep dive is about how these mental frameworks, we all have them, these schemas can make us vulnerable.
So imagine this. Someone in a doctor's coat walks up to you, clipboard in hand. You automatically assume, okay, this person's trustworthy.
Right.
That's your doctor schema kicking in.
Precisely. It's based on years of associating, doctors with knowledge, with health, with help.
Right.
Now, someone with bad intentions can exploit that schema, taking advantage of that automatic trust.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So break down schemas for us. What are they exactly?
So schemas are mental shortcuts our brains create from our experiences. They help us make quick judgments without overthinking everything. Imagine if you had to analyze every single detail every time you encountered something new.
Right.
You'd be frozen in place.
You'd never get anything done.
That's exactly. Yeah.
So these schemas help us navigate the world efficiently, but they can also backfire, especially when it comes to scams.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that even when a scam is in motion, when those red flags start popping up, our schemas can actually work against us.
You mean we cling to our initial assumptions
Yeah.
even when things start to feel wrong?
Absolutely. We might reinterpret those red flags to fit our existing beliefs. It's called confirmation bias. You might even get angry when someone tries to point out the scam because you're so invested in it.
Yeah, that's scary. We're actively defending our decision to trust the scammer.
Sometimes, yeah. This is a key reason why victims often blame themselves after a scam.
Oh, wow.
Their entire worldview feels shattered, and it can be incredibly difficult to rebuild that trust.
Yeah, it's like, who can you trust, right?
Right. It's like you've built this whole mental model based on your schema,
Right.
and then suddenly the foundation crumbles.
Yeah.
That can be incredibly difficult to process.
So we've talked about how schemas can make us vulnerable, but how do scammers actually use them to their advantage?
Okay.
What are they tapping into?
Think about it. We're primed to trust certain figures. A person in uniform, someone who seems successful, or even someone who just showers us with compliments.
Yeah.
Scammers understand these inherent biases,
Great.
and they exploit them.
So they're playing on our expectations, making themselves seem like they fit the pattern
Yes.
of someone trustworthy.
Exactly. And it's not just about logic. They manipulate emotions, too. That's where the amygdala, that emotional center of our brain, comes into play. Let's say you get an email that appears to be from your bank, right? They've got the logo, the official language,
Right.
maybe even some personal details.
Which they probably bought off the dark web.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But in that moment, your authority schema is activated.
Yeah.
You're less likely to question it. Click a bad link.
Oh, no.
And suddenly you're handing over sensitive information
Without a second thought.
without even thinking about it.
Wow. It's amazing how these unconscious biases can shape our actions.
Yeah.
The SCARS brief actually mentions the work of Jean Piaget,
Oh.
the child psychologist.
Mhm.
What's his connection to all of this?
Well, Piaget observed that children, they develop these mental models, these
Yeah.
schemas, to understand the world around them.
Okay.
Remember that example of the child and the chihuahua?
Yeah.
That's their schema being challenged and adapting.
Right, because they thought a dog was a dog was a dog.
Exactly.
And then suddenly there's this other thing.
Right. And it has 4 legs and a tail.
That's not a dog.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
a chihuahua.
And as we grow, those schemas become more complex, but the basic principle, it remains the same.
Right.
We're constantly trying to fit new information into our existing frameworks.
And scammers exploit that.
Yes.
They present themselves as fitting into our schema of, say, a trustworthy financial advisor or a potential romantic partner,
Right.
knowing that we're kind of, pre-programmed
Yeah.
to see patterns and make quick judgments.
Absolutely.
Like our own brains are working against us in a way.
In a way they are, yeah.
So during a scam, those red flags pop up and we often explain them away, but what happens afterward?
Yeah.
How do our schemas affect us then?
After a scam, it's not just the financial loss, right? It's the
Right.
psychological impact.
Right.
The scars brief talks about how victims, they experience these intense feelings of shame, self-doubt,
Oh, wow.
even a reluctance to seek help.
Yeah, because you feel foolish.
Exactly.
It makes sense. Your trust is violated, and you blame yourself for not seeing the signs.
Right.
It must be really hard to reconcile that experience. It really does. It's like your whole reality is shattered.
Yeah, and that's precisely what makes recovery so challenging. The Scars Institute really emphasizes that, the
Yeah.
importance of rebuilding that trust,
Right.
both in oneself and in others after a breach like that.
So it's not just about being more careful in the future.
Right.
It's about addressing the emotional fallout as well.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though, could this happen in other areas of life, too?
Oh, absolutely.
Are there other times when our schemas lead us astray? Even when it's not, a calculated scam?
All the time, yeah. Think about unhealthy relationships.
Okay.
Someone might have a schema for romantic love that includes intense emotions, jealousy, maybe even possessiveness.
Right.
And that schema might cause them to stay in a relationship that's clearly unhealthy.
Oh, wow.
Explaining away red flags, ignoring those gut feelings.
Because it fits the pattern
Exactly.
of what they think love should be.
Exactly.
Or imagine a job interview. Right. We might overemphasize certain qualities in a candidate just because they fit our schema
Yes.
of the ideal employee.
Absolutely.
And we could be overlooking someone, really remarkable
Right.
because they don't fit that preconceived mold.
It happens all the time.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. Our schemas, as useful as they are, they're not infallible.
Right.
The key takeaway here, I think, is awareness.
Okay.
Once we understand how these mental shortcuts work, then we can start to question them, challenge them, and ultimately, take control of our perceptions.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all.
There are things we can actually do to kind of become more aware of these schemas.
Right.
And hopefully avoid falling prey to, these mental traps.
Exactly. We're not powerless against our own minds.
Right.
The Scars Institute actually outlines some helpful strategies.
Okay, like what?
First, we need to reflect on our patterns. Notice those knee-jerk judgments, those assumptions you make without even thinking.
So like catching ourselves when we're running on autopilot.
Exactly.
Right.
And then don't be afraid to seek external perspectives.
Right.
Talk to friends, family, even a therapist.
Right. Get a reality check
Right, exactly.
from somebody else.
They can offer really valuable insights and help you see things from a different angle. Remember how you mentioned your friend helped you avoid that investment scheme?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we need that outside perspective
Yes.
to kind of snap us out of our own biases.
Absolutely. And this might sound a little out there,
Okay.
but practicing mindfulness can actually be incredibly helpful
Okay.
by paying attention to our thoughts and feelings in the present moment.
Right.
We can create space between those automatic reactions and making more conscious choices.
So it's about taking control of our thoughts
Yes.
instead of letting them control us.
Exactly.
I like that.
And for those who've been deeply impacted by scams
Oh, yeah.
or anyone struggling with those particularly harmful schemas,
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be a really powerful tool.
Guess so.
It helps to restructure those really ingrained thought patterns.
So it helps you kind of rewire those schemas in a way.
Exactly.
That makes sense. It's amazing how much our brains influence every aspect of our lives, This whole deep dive has really given me a new perspective on things.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It's not just about avoiding scams.
Right.
It's about just navigating the world with more awareness,
Yeah.
I think.
Well said. And remember, these schemas, they're shaped by our individual experiences.
Right.
But those experiences are influenced by our culture, our upbringing.
Right. All of it.
So much more.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how those bigger factors end up shaping our schemas, right?
Yeah.
And how can we be more sensitive to those differences? I think that's something for everyone to kind of consider as they go about their day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if this sparks any aha moments or any personal stories,
Please share them.
yeah, we invite you to share those with us because I think, ultimately understanding these mental shortcuts, these schemas,
Yeah.
it helps us all navigate the world with more awareness,
More empathy.
more empathy.
And a
yeah.
little more wisdom, I think.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, stay curious
Yeah.
and keep those schemas in check.